Hey, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Giant Zone podcast. You've got your co-host, Steve the Banker, and myself, yours truly, Fly Guy Carl. And before we introduce our guests, what we want to ask is please continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel as you watch our videos, and please continue with the 5-star ratings as you download and listen as well. The support we've received has been great so far. We ask if you can just keep doing that for us to help us keep bringing the show to you. We're joined here tonight by one of our followers. This is Mitch. Mitch, say hello to everybody.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me on.
So Mitch has been a great follower. He's always has good things to say. I always saw on Twitter, and he's very knowledgeable about his information with the Giants and his views on the Giants. So we thought he'd be a great show tonight. So Mitch, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show. Why don't you give us a little background about yourself, Mitch, how you became a Giants fan, how long, and then also if you have any Giants related or game day traditions.
Okay. Well, once again, thanks for having me on, Carl and Steve. I'm glad to be here. I was just starting off with how I became a Giants fan. I grew up in Western Maryland, and my dad happened to be a Steelers fan. I was kind of a devil's advocate. So I started off as a Raider fan and then a Browns fan, and just kind of digging at my dad a little bit. And I found that I really enjoyed defense. Defenses was what drove me. And Lawrence Taylor came onto the scene and won me over. And I've been a Giants fan since the day he became a Giant. So that's where I reside with that. And, I've raised my boys to be Giants fans as well.
There you go. There you go. Keep it in the family. Keep it going strong, Mitch. We like that.
Absolutely.
And I don't think you're the only one out there that can say, well, you became a Giants fan because of Lawrence Taylor. I think so many people became Giant fans because of Lawrence Taylor. What about any Giants related or game day traditions that you may have, Mitch?
Every Sunday that the Giants are playing, or Monday, my son and I go down to the basement surrounded by our Giants paraphernalia and gear up for the game. It's rain or shine, we're watching the Giants.
I like that. Very nice. Very nice.
You got me ready for the start of the season, man.
Oh, yeah, me too.
You already have the cleats laced up, don't you, Mitch?
I'm sorry?
You already have the cleats laced up, don't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm ready. I'm geared up all the time. My friend's wife says, if I don't have Giants on, she's like, where's your uniform?
Who is this man?
Exactly.
So Mitch, let's get into it. I know you have some questions for us. So why don't you just get into it and ask away? Okay.
One of the things I want to know is what you guys thought would be, the current players on the roster, and who do you think is going to adapt to the new systems offensively and defensively? Who do you see is going to excel or fall?
Steve, I'm gonna lead with this one if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So, in my preparation for this, I kind of went down the roster, and instead of going through every guy, I kind of cherry picked who I think would get impacted the most here. On offensively, I got 3, and they're all pretty obvious. Daniel Jones, obviously. Saquon Bartlett, again, I think that's obvious. And Kadarius Toney, I think also. I wrote down Kenny Golladay, but I put question marks because I don't know what to expect out of Kenny Golladay. I don't know if his head is into it, or if it's going to be into it, or what his health is going to be. So I don't know. Daniel Jones, like we were talking before we started recording, Mitch, I go back to what Brian Daboll said on his introductory press conference, that we are going to design a system around the strengths of the players. Mm-hmm. And then you add on to that, John Mara saying, hey, we failed this guy. We did not put him in the position to succeed since he's been here. So I think they're going to do everything possible to see him succeed. And it makes the most sense to do that and see him turn the corner and be successful. Like we were saying, if he's successful, the team's successful. And Saquon Bartlett, I think Saquon has a chip on his shoulder. The injuries, yes. But you know what? These guys read and hear what's going on and being said in the offseason. And look, I'm going to be the first one to admit that, I said, maybe it's time to trade him. I've said that on a couple shows. If he's here, and I'm not changing my position, I don't do that. If there's a trade to be made for him, I think he'll be dealt. But if he's here, I think he wants to prove that he is still Saquon Barkley. And I think he wants to prove that he was worthy of that number 2 pick. So those are my 3 on offense. On defense, I got Adoree Jackson. I've got Azeez Ojulari and Xavier McKinney, and that's not earth-shattering. I think his role is just going to continue to develop. I think he's going to take on more of that Jabril Peppers leadership type role and position. Adoree Jackson, I think Wink Martindale wants to blitz more, and I think Adoree Jackson's perfect for that. Azeez Ojulari, I think he's the perfect type of player that Wink likes. He can rush, he can drop back in coverage, he attacks the ball. I expect a very good full year of production. I think he kind of tailed off towards the end of the season last year. And then again, Xavier McKinney, nothing earth-shattering. I just think he's going to continue to progress and take on more of that leadership Jabril Peppers role that we saw out of Jabril Peppers. Steve?
So great question, Mitch. And one of the things I love about it is it's I think something we've all been wondering and thinking, but everyone's been afraid to talk about who's it going to affect positively and who is going to have a tough time with it. So what I did is I did similar thing to Carl. I looked down the roster and I broke it down to offense and defense. And then within each, I said flourish or won't adapt, right? So offense, almost identical to Carl. I think what this coaching staff is going to do, and we've talked about it on the podcast before, is they're going to use motion. They're going to put guys in space. I think the first 4 or 5 games, we also mentioned that a few episodes ago, they're not going to roll out even 50% of it. It's going to take time. They're going to slide into or ease their way into it, the playbook. That offensive line is going to take time to gel. I think we immediately have an offensive lineman who is in Glowinski, who's a better run blocking guard than we've had in probably 4 or 5 years, maybe longer. So we're going to see some holes. Saquon is going to see some holes that he's not used to seeing. And that's beautiful. I think Saquon could stumble and trip his way into 1,200 yards this season if he stays healthy, which is not a great season for him, right? Remember his first year and a half, 2 years in the league. But the point is, this offensive line is going to take time to gel and pass pro, picking up some stunts. So it's not going to be super exciting, I think, at the beginning. I think we have to maintain our expectations. So getting into it, Daniel Jones, Kadarius Toney, Saquon Barkley, I mirrored exactly what Carl said. I think they're going to flourish. Matt Breida is, I'm cheating. That's my 4th. I think he's going to have more of an impact than people realize. I think the first week or 2 after he signed, people learned about him. Everyone was excited. And I can guarantee you, until training camp, everyone's going to forget about him. And then in training camp, we might see some stuff that people get a little excited about. And then the average fan might not even realize. And then the season's going to start and people are going to forget about him. They're going to look at the juicy names, the exciting names with the shine on it. Kadarius, Saquon, yada, yada. And then we're going to see this Matt Breida kid get involved. He's going to be his backup. He's going to be out in the flat. He's going to be in motion. He's going to do rollouts. We've seen on tape what he can do if this kid stays healthy. So that's who I think can flourish. I actually brought up in my mind, Carl, Kenny Galladay's name. And I don't think he's going to adapt well. And let me explain what I mean by that. I don't think he's not going to not have a good year. I don't think he's going to have $72 million number 1 receiver money. I think in this offense, I think he'll have 100-yard games, God willing. He'll have games with a touchdown. That's a huge difference from last year. I agree. But he's not going to be top 5 or top 10 wide receiver in the league. His game is not going into motion. His game is not working in space. He's not he doesn't have a lot of shake to him. We all know what type of receiver is. He's a guy who's 6'3", 6'4", and he's going to just throw him the ball. So I think there's going to be games where hopefully this coaching staff, offensively, Kafka, Dable, are going to work with DJ and explain to him, you just need to, and there'll be confidence that DJ hasn't had probably since his rookie year. So I think Kenny Golladay is going to have a good year, but I don't know if he's going to quote unquote flourish. I don't know that he's going to have the year that we signed him for, right? So that's offense. Defense, very simple. I think I look back at Wink's defenses from not only when he was a defensive coordinator in Baltimore, but also the linebackers coach. He had a history of taking non-first round picks, not only second, but guys even in the middle rounds with tremendous potential. So there's a couple of things he did. We know what type of defense he has: penetrating scheme, pre-snap motion, disguising pressures. The offense, the center, the quarterback have no clue where the pressure is coming from, and he loves to blitz. We've talked about it, puts the corners on an island. There's usually that one guy, that one kid who has tremendous potential, but is like a diamond in the rough. Tyus Bowser was a round 2 pick out of Houston. Not quite. I mean, a round 2 pick, you expect some production, right? He led Baltimore in sacks in 20 and 21. In 2019, we know this name. He went to New England 2 years ago and killed it. Matt Judon. Matt Judon, people are like, oh yeah, of course, Matt Judon. He was great. He was a round 5 pick out of Grand Valley State. I mean, come on, guys. Like, really? Yeah. And that's what Wink and his staff that he puts together does. Matt Judon led the team in sacks in 2019. In 2018, he was number 2 on the team. Number 1 was Zadaria Smith. Guess what? Not a first or second round pick. Zadaria Smith, people are like, oh, of course. Yeah, of course. Zadaria Smith. Yeah, he's great. Went to Green Bay. He's killing it. He was a round 4 pick out of Kentucky. Not exactly a powerhouse. I mean, they've had a couple of edge rushers get picked over the last 3, 4, 5 years, but Zadaria Smith didn't come out and blow it up in the draft. He lasted all the way to the 4th. And prior to that, Pernell McPhee was a 5th round pick out of Mississippi State when Wink was a linebackers coach. Got 6 sacks in 2011, 7.5 sacks in 2014. So I say all that because he's got an ability himself and with the team, with the staff he puts together, of developing players, especially in those middle rounds. So the guy that I'm thinking is Ellerson Smith. I think a lot of us fans have already forgotten about him. 6'7", 245 when he came out of college. Hopefully he's a little bit bigger than that. Out of Northern Iowa, again, a beautiful, what we used to call 1AA program, but not a powerhouse, athletic freak. Had a former great NFL player, I believe, a linebacker from Green Bay. That was his mentor, his coach, taught him how to rush the passer when they converted him to an edge rusher in college. Tons of potential, diamond in the rough. That's exactly the type of person, the type of player. Hopefully he's healthy, unlike the majority of last season. So that's my flourish guy. I think there's a lot of players who could do well. I think the whole team, the whole defense is going to flourish. His defenses spread out the sacks. Elvis Duverville had 17 sacks 1 year. I mean, he's had years where there is that one guy, that alpha male. But as we saw with Matt Judon when he went to New England, and I think he had 15 sacks last year, Matt Judon never had that type of production in Baltimore. They tend to spread it out, right? By definition, you don't know where the pressure's coming. Carl, to your point, maybe it's a corner that's blitzing. Won't adapt. I'll get to that real quick because I've already taken up a lot of time. Bradbury, if he's still here.
Yes.
I think we all know he's not a press corner. He's great in coverage. He's great in zone coverage. I think he's a good man corner. Don't get me wrong, but he's not an elite press corner. And that's what you want. There's not a lot of Darrell Revises out there, but you need a Dory Jackson is phenomenal at that. I think Darnay Holmes, if they ask him to start covering deep, Darnay's better by the line. He was a great rookie. Fine for us as a slot corner. Didn't have such a great year last year. Also got hurt. Aaron Robinson, I think, is the guy that's going to supplant him. He was phenomenal the few games at the end of the season when he played, when they had a dearth of injuries in the corner position and actually asked him to cover. We saw what type of athlete he is. We saw how physical he is. They talked about in the draft. But if he takes him and says, I want you to do what Adoree does on a consistent basis and be a press man corner, I think everyone knows that's not what he was meant to do and what he's meant to be. But to finish thoughts, Carl, you talked about Adoree blitzing. Can you imagine Aaron Robinson as a blitzer? So I think defense is where everyone was like, I don't know. I think there's a potential for a lot of people to have a great year. Ellerson Smith, though, is my diamond in the rough that I'm hopeful for.
Mitch, give us yours.
I was, Steve stole my thunder. I mean, I was right there with you on Smith. I think that his first year was just getting him, into an NFL body.
Mm-hmm.
And now he gets an attacking defensive coordinator in Wink. I'm loving his potential there. I'm a little bit on the opposite side on Holmes. I love the way that they used him as a blitzer in his rookie year. I'd like to see more of that from him. And I agree with Robinson as well. I think that he can be a real attribute, whether they put him on the outside or bring him inside as a slot. And on the offensive side, I'm a little bit different. I was a big fan of bringing Galladay in, not for the money, that they signed him for, but a big contested catch receiver like Galladay, I think has a real opportunity in this offense. The way that Dable designs to get his receivers open, I can see them designing to get him one-on-one coverage, and that's just throw the ball up and let him work. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the guy that we thought we were signing last year.
I hope you're right and I'm wrong.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how, it came out after last season that, and this is why I say Kadarius Toney this year, and I didn't really expand on him much, but I think they're going, involve him in the offense more. They're going to expand his role. They're going to utilize his talents. What I thought was fascinating, and it came out at the end of last season, how halfway through the season, I think he was one of the players that some of the players they still couldn't learn Jason Garrett's offense. And I scratched my head because the offense that we saw on the field seemed very vanilla. There wasn't a lot of motion. There didn't seem to be a lot of trap blocking. So I don't know. I just think that coaching staff lost the locker room, that the guys just quit last year. And that's why I think with the new energy, new change, new direction, I'm really hoping that Kadarius Toney takes that step forward. So, you both mentioned Robinson on defense. And one thing I didn't do, Steve, I heard you mention Matt Breida. And what I didn't want to do, and I kind of wrestled with this as I was doing my homework here, was I didn't want to include players that came from Buffalo or some of the new free agent signings. So that's why I agree with you. I think Breida is going to be sneaky good and play I think he's going to carve out a very good role here. But that's why I didn't include it. But I agree with you and I think Robinson also is going to be a dark horse here. I think Wink is going to love him and find ways to utilize him. I think you guys are both spot on with that as well. What else do you have for us, Mitch?
Well, everyone's talking trade in the first round. So who do you think is the best trade partners, and what type of package do you think we could bring back?
Steve, this is your baby, so I'm going to let you run with this one, man.
All right. Thanks, Carl. As people have heard me on recent podcasts and watched, I have my trusty, well, I don't know how well people would see it, my trusty Jimmy Johnson points chart. Everybody knows it and loves it. And what's cool about my chart that I downloaded is it has every slot in the draft and who's picking in those slots. So I don't have to think about, well, okay, but who's picking at 119, which is, whatever pick in the fourth round. Let me go look. I mean, this chart has it. So Mitch, I'll answer your question very quickly. Pick 5, as far as I'm concerned, off the table. You guys can talk all you want till you're blue in the face. I don't want them. I'll be absolutely devastated if they trade pick 5. I know I may have even sounded like I was open to the idea a couple of weeks ago, depending on if Cross is there. Is he really the guy? What if we lose out? I don't care. I don't want us to trade pick 5. So moving on. Pick 7 to me, the pick that I'd be open to. But let me preface this by saying I've also come to a place where I don't want us to trade pick 7. I know everyone's like, oh, load up for next year. Guys, there are 15 teams by my count if anyone's wondering, send me a tweet, DM me. I'll send you the teams. I talked about it a couple episodes ago. There are a potential of 15 teams next year. Very possible we'll all be looking for a quarterback. There's only 2 right now that everyone's freaking out about, loving. Oh my God, they're going to be amazing. And there might be more. We think there might be more, but as we all know, look back at the last 5 drafts and there's at least one quarterback in the top 10 that we didn't know about the year before. So we got to wait for the college season to play out. I think Seattle at pick 9 could jump up to our 7, and that would take at least their round 3 pick, which is number 72. They also have a round 2 pick, but I think their round 2 pick might be worth too much. But if we feel that they want to jump up to get a quarterback, again, that seems to be the big thing that everyone's talking about. One day, everyone's like, "Oh my God, there's going to be a frenzy for Malik Willis and one of the other kids," and then the next day, everyone's like, "No, come on, none of these guys are really first round talents." So I think Seattle at pick 9, Minnesota, they really need a corner. I think Daniel Jeremiah talked about the other day. They may be falling in love with Sauce. So let's say Sauce is still there. And they're all the way down at pick 12. In all likelihood, they're going to miss out. So they could flip-flop with us. We would drop from 7 to 12. They have a round 2 pick, which is pick number 46. That would probably be enough for us. I know as fans, we always want more. They also have a round 3, which is number 77. They don't have a round 4 pick. And their later picks are almost worthless compared to those higher picks. So we'd probably need a combination of, if we don't get their round 2 pick, then we would need their round 3 and probably some future picks next year or some combination. So I think Minnesota's a little less likely, but it's possible. They could easily put together. But then again, why would Minnesota, who desperately needs that one corner, trade up and give up a ton of picks in what is a very deep draft? I think that's the conundrum. The other 2 teams I'll mention, just because people have been talking about, New Orleans at pick 16. They have 2 picks now. They traded with Philly. We all know that. They have picked 19 and 16. I actually think this is something that could happen. It would be a further drop for us. New Orleans keeps its 19. I mean, I can't imagine they offer both to us. If they offer both to us, we need to run to the podium. The talent falls off quite a bit down to 16, but we could get their 16th pick, their round 2 pick, which is number 49, and their round 3, which is number 98. So let me rephrase that. It's a win-win potentially for New Orleans. They keep their 19th pick in the first round. They move up to 7. They trade us pick number 16, pick number 49, round 2, and their round 3 pick. So we pick up a 2nd and a 3rd, both of which are in the top 100. One is number 49 and one is number 98. I think that's possible. I don't know that I want us to do it. I don't want us to overthink the draft. And lastly, the Steelers. They're at pick 20. That's a little too far for me. They have a pick in round 2, which is number 52. They have a pick in round 3, which is number 170. And they have a 4th round pick. If they gave us all 3 of those picks, plus their pick 20, I still don't think it's enough points. So I think Pittsburgh is very, 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 very unlikely. Minnesota, I don't know how much sense it makes, but it's doable. And we'd pick up a bunch of picks, but why would Minnesota give away all those picks for a corner? Seattle and New Orleans are the 2 teams to me.
Mitch, what do you think on this?
Yeah, you always got to find that trade partner, and that's where it becomes difficult for me, because I'm like many other people. In order to get out of 5 or 7, I got to have a first rounder next year, and I don't know that there's going to be a fit there. Me personally, I would love to get multiple 2nd rounders, but I don't know that there's anybody in the draft that has multiple 2nd round picks, because I find that you can really build your team in that 2nd round. There's so many options for receivers and interior linemen and interior defensive linemen that makes so much sense, but don't quite make sense to draft in the first round. That's what I'd like to see. But like I said, I don't think that there's anybody who has multiple picks in the 2nd round this year.
There are.
There
I'm
are?
actually looking as I'm looking at teams that have multiple second round picks here. I'm not bringing it up yet, but
Seattle has 40 and 41, which are back to back.
yeah,
Oh, nice.
okay, all right. You both bring up good points, and so the way I went about this was I kind of made a list of teams that would potentially look to draft a quarterback this year in the draft. Two of them that I listed draft ahead of us, Detroit and Houston. All right. Atlanta's out there. Possible. We discussed New Orleans, we discussed Seattle, who are also on my list. Pittsburgh is on my list. Minnesota's on my list. There's a final team that's on my list that we haven't discussed yet. And that is Carolina. Now, I understand Carolina picks 6. And I'm just going to throw this out there as a question to you, because this is what went through my head as I was putting this list together. If Carolina catches wind of a team that's trying to trade up ahead of them to get a quarterback, they may then be inclined to say, hey, you know what? Hey, Giants, let's swap 5 and 6, and maybe we sweeten the pot with a second or, a first next year or something. I don't know if it's going to happen, but can I see it happen? Can I see that conversation at least being had? I can. Steve, I saw you shaking your head. Steve?
Yeah.
I saw you shaking your head knowing that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, sorry for being so obvious. But first of all, they have like almost no picks left in the draft after their first round. So,
right. So it has the futures.
So they'd have to give us a first round pick next year,
right.
But like, I don't know how, I mean, they have a 5th round pick. They're the first pick in the 5th round. I mean, whatever. It's nice, but yeah, you'd be looking for a high pick next year.
Right.
Carolina needs 2 things more than anything. They need a future quarterback, and they need a tackle.
They need
so,
yeah.
I think if somebody leapfrogs them and takes, I think there's probably 2 or 3 quarterbacks they'd be happy with. They're probably in love with Malik, but I think the whisper talk is that Pickett, David Tepper, the richest owner in the NFL. I mean, he's from that area, Pittsburgh, went to school there. I always forget if he went to Carnegie Mellon or University of Pittsburgh, but I mean, David Tepper is a Pittsburgh guy. There's a lot of connections with the coaching staff. All the talk is Pickett is probably the guy they like, but we all know about misdirection before the draft and how there's a lot of stuff that goes out there. And they could be looking at Malik Willis for all we know this whole time. Right. They could be looking at one of the other guys. I mean, they could be just falling in love with a particular QB. So I think even if somebody leapfrogs them, unless there's only one quarterback they're interested in, they'll either take the other QB or they'll take the tackle that's there. So for them to give up so much future draft capital when they are also a team that really needs to rebuild, I don't think they're ready to win. Their offensive line was almost as bad as ours. A running back that's incredibly highly paid, and they need to do something with him. I don't know. Everything that I've read and heard is that Tepper has gotten real frustrated. He's not happy. He wants to fix that. He's owned the team for a period of time long enough that he's a winner. He's used to winning in life. The guy made all this. Yeah. And everybody out there is like that coach is on the hot seat.
Yes.
He came in with a lot of fanfare, and Tepper is not happy. He's ready to go find their quarterback, but they need a tackle too. So I don't know.
And you know what? You mentioned McCaffrey, and there's been talk that they're taking offers on McCaffrey. That trade chip can also lead to picks as well, which then can lead to deals as well. So that's kind of why, given all that, I wanted to at least throw that name out there just to kind of say, hey, what do you think? Mitch, what do you think about Carolina?
I think it would be very difficult for them to sweeten the pot versus somebody else coming up from behind us. But also, my fear of trading from 5 is leaving the tackle available to Carolina. I would much rather get our tackle at 5 and deal with 7.
Right.
You know, seven is a pick that I'd be willing to go back to 12 with Minnesota. And I think I would be willing to go back as far as 16 with New Orleans, as Steve was suggesting. I would love to get that trade, 16, a second and a third, to move back 9 spots. I think that's a place that we could really do a lot of damage in the draft, getting that extra capital.
And one thing I'll add to close out this is that I saw it on Twitter today. And I think it was last week's guest, the entertainer, that put it out there that, and this could be a smokescreen, so I'll preface it by saying that. But there seems to be reports that Shane is now less inclined to deal that 7 pick. That, he seems to be considering more staying there and just, plugging another hole. And hey, I hope he does. I've liked that strategy all along. I mean, I understand that the prospect of trading, but there's just so many holes on this roster. I love the idea of getting 2 studs at 5 and 7, but who knows? They're not paying me to make these choices. So given that, what else do you have for us, Mitch?
Well, we all like to talk about the positives. What's the nightmare scenario coming out of the first round?
All right. So let's approach it this way.
Okay.
What's your nightmare scenario coming out of the first round?
So I had this discussion with my son, and the first thing that popped in my mind was, what if they drafted Malik Willis and Garrett Wilson? And then as soon as I said it, I was like, I might be okay with that, because that's telling me that they have a real direction that they want to go in, and they're going for it. So coming up with a nightmare scenario that's more plausible than what I just put out there is 3 tackles off the board, and we're sitting there at 5, and we're not going to be able to get what we desperately need to make this offense go. That would be, that would make me sit back in my chair and really ponder what's about to happen at 5.
So I'm going to piggyback that, and I'm going to say, to your point, we don't get a tackle at 5. I am not as high on Cross as other people are.
Mm-hmm.
So my nightmare scenario is we don't get Neil or Iquanu. All right. We maybe reach for somebody, and then we try to get creative and trade out at 7, thinking we can get somebody later on. And then those players start coming off the board. And then we have the whole Eli Apple draft scenario again.
Yeah.
That's why I'm more inclined to say, hey, look, stay where you are, get your studs, and let's do this right. Steve?
Yeah, I agree. I think the nightmare scenario, I think a really, really, really terrible scenario would be, I'm not going to call it a nightmare. I think a terrible, terrible scenario would be the tackles are gone, right? Okay, fine. I want to then take whatever blue chipper is left, because there's probably only 4 or 5 blue chippers in this whole draft, literally. Maybe 6 or 7, beauties in the eye. Mm-hmm. That's it. There's some kids with tremendous upside, but that doesn't make them a blue chipper. Blue chipper is something different. So I want us to take the best player available then. And now at 7, I want us to trade, but I don't want us to panic. Panicking is the nightmare scenario to me. So what does that look like? As a mentor of mine once used to like to say, what does success look like, Stephen? Success then would be trading down from 7 and still being able to get, let's say, Penning,
Sure,
maybe the 4th best tackle, and pick up some extra draft collateral. So, it's a little bit of a gamble, and part of it is our Dable and his staff and our assistant GM, who we all love. I mean, those guys sort of knowing having a game plan, having a good feel for other GMs, and knowing the board and saying, listen, this is where there's going to be a run on wide receivers. We know there's going to be a run on wide receivers in the first round. We know there's going to be a run on edges in the first round. Like there's going to be some run. So are they able to kind of sort of say, all right, based upon this area, we should be able to at least get this guy. A nightmare is for me. So by definition, a nightmare is not getting an offensive tackle in the first round. Yeah. That's no good. And I know they can potentially find one in the second and the third. If everybody listened to our podcast a week ago, I talked about it. I did a research. I think it was 28 of all 64 starting offensive tackles on the depth charts in the NFL today, pre-draft, were first round picks. And if you assume at least a minimum of 4, which is ridiculous, it's probably going to be 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 even. I mean, depending upon health and how they play in the preseason and all that good stuff, how quickly they pick up the playbook. But there's going to be some kids who are drafted this year in the first round and beyond who probably end up supplanting some of the crappier ones, especially who were never first round picks to begin with, that are currently starters. So let's just be generous and say 4. Well, that takes you from 28 to 32 of the starting tackles in the NFL of the 64, because there's 2 per team, right? That were first round picks. There's a reason for that. It's so hard. So we need to get a tackle, and we need to get him in the first round. I don't even care anymore if they get him at pick 16 or pick 5, I should say. I want that at pick 5, but to me, that would be the nightmare scenario, not getting our offensive tackle.
Mitch, let me ask you a question, because there's been a lot of back and forth about this player. What is your opinion of Thibodeau out of Oregon? Do you like him?
I like him. I'm not sure what's happening in the media that's spitting the negative on the kid. What I've seen is a player I'd love to see wearing blue. Do I want him at 5? No. I think that it sounds like the 3 of us are in agreement. If Neil or Kwanu are there at 5, it's a no-brainer. Don't hesitate. Put that card in. And if I think it would be the same thing at 7 if Thibodeau's there. The only hesitation I would have at 7 is if Sauce Gardner is there as well. I'm all in on Gardner myself.
Welcome to the club. I think Steve and I will both agree with you on that one.
Can I ask both you guys a question? So we've kind of talked about it in a way, but we really haven't. So I want to get real direct and granular with this. Neil and Aquana are gone. We're up at pick 5. You have Hamilton, you have Sauce, and you have Cross. I've already said I don't want to trade out. Oh, excuse me, and Thibodeau. So let's sweeten the pot, make it easier. You got Hamilton, who not so long ago was maybe the only perfect player in the draft. And I think his combine was for, what we were hoping, but he's a safety. We talked about that earlier in our podcast series about, I was wrong in the past. Safeties, it turns out, Derwin James and all these. Safety is more important than it ever was. You would give Wink a chess piece, but still it's a safety. So you got him, the number 1 safety. You got Sauce, the number 1 corner. I know we've talked about Stingley, et cetera, but let's just say Sauce. And you got Thibodeau. And you got Cross. Those are your 4 options. What do you do at pick 5?
Who are you asking?
Both of you.
Mitch? Go ahead, Mitch. You're the guest.
To me, there's a lot of W's there. Once again, I'd love to have Gardner. I think that he's going to be a real gem. I actually snuck a 4th question in there for you guys, and it was, what do you think about the opportunity, the option of having Gardner and Hamilton as 5 and 7? And I think that's a big win. I can see you're saying no, Steve, but in this scenario where you don't have those tackles as an option, I think that would be a really interesting selections. But when you throw Thibodeau still on the board, it would be hard to take Hamilton there. But I would have to go Gardner, and assuming Carolina's not going to go Thibodeau at 7.
No. So forget 7. So I just want to be clear. So pick 5. You got
That's
Hamilton
fine.
and Sauce. You got, forget about Hamilton and Sauce. I don't even care about them anymore.
Okay.
You got Thibodeau and Cross. So you got the kid that might be the preeminent edge rusher. Not might be, probably is the clear cut premier edge rusher in the draft. Or you got your tackle if you take Cross. You're passing on who? You're passing on Cross?
Mitch?
I'm pondering.
I know, you see?
That's a very tough question.
All right. So I'm going to answer this 2 ways. Okay.
Nice.
So your first question was, the original question you asked was, you got at 5, you've got a choice of Hamilton, Sauce, Thibodeau, and Cross.
That's right.
So I say they go Sauce over Hamilton because in Wink's defense, cornerback is a more prominent position than safety is. So I think I eliminate Hamilton there. Okay. So then if you've got Garner, Thibodeau, and Cross,
It's a hard, yeah.
This is tough. I'm going to
It
answer
could happen.
heart, and then I'm going to put some logic into it. My heart is on Sauce, and then it comes down to, does Wink win that power struggle? But supposedly the Giants met a second time this week with Thibodeau. They interviewed him at the combine, and now they're meeting with him again. So if I had to say, my heart says Sauce. If I had to put money on it, I think they would take Thibodeau at 5. In that scenario, that's what I think. Guys?
I could say something, but I'm
You put
deferring
it
to
out there, Steve. So go ahead. What do you think there, big guy?
No, I'm deferring to Mitch because I want to hear what he has to say because I have thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you, Carl. I mean, my heart says Gardner there. I can be swayed to Cross because it's a difficult question.
Tough
Because
question.
Cross is a great pass blocker. And does his, will he transition to the right tackle? That's always been my concern. Is he able to move over? Because he's not going to supplant Thomas, not in my mind. And that's where I'd be hesitant to pull the trigger at 5 for Cross.
I think he's lacking the run blocking skills that would make him that number 5 pick.
Right.
That's kind of why I discount him. But go ahead, Steve. I know, Steve, you're chomping at the bit here, so go ahead.
I think the reason that, and we talked about this, I think it was 2 podcasts ago, that we are all so excited about this coaching staff. And the reason I started this back and forth is I knew where it was going to go, is because it's not easy. And so all right, so let me finish the first thought. I think what they're doing is creating contingency plans, and they're very, very purposeful about it. These guys are not waffling and wavering. They know exactly what they want to do. They have an action plan. So I think what they're doing is they're looking at the board and they're saying Carolina's going to take a QB or tackle. That's it. Right? I think we can probably stake our ground in that. Now you can argue about what they're going to do, but they're going to do one or the other.
Right.
And I don't think they're going to trade up. So if you don't have your top 2 tackles at 5, and I think we will, but you never know. That's their job, is to prepare for this, right? Neal and Aquana are gone. I think the choice comes down to Sauce or Thibodeau. I think they take Thibodeau because I have to be consistent. I've been saying this, and I started off by saying it's an incredibly deep draft with edges, and you can get an edge in the second. But honestly, the only guy that I really want at the top of the second is Boye Mafe. And it's looking more and more like he may be gone by. He's not going to last, guys. Brothers, he's probably, it sucks. So I don't see anyone unless somebody just drops, which happens. Like if Karloffis drops, I want him at the top of the second. For the value there, he's the strongest, biggest MNFing edge we have in this whole draft. He's just going to bull rush everybody. He doesn't have a lot of moves, but he's going to win. And he's going to get his 7, 8, 9 sacks. He's going to be tremendous defending the run. You know, is he a first round pick for me? No. But if he's there at the top of this, so I think at 5, they go with Thibodeau. Carolina takes Cross or QB. Worst case, we have Cross at 7, which, Mitch, would you be okay with Cross at 7?
Oh, yeah, I think that I believe in what Joe Shane is doing. So if he sees him as a viable option that they can convert to a right tackle, I'm on board. I'm not going to say I'm not a little bit worried about him, but I have had my sights on Iquanu and Neal, and then Cross. You know, that's how I see them.
And let me just add one thing, Carl, before you go. I think because I meant to finish this thought earlier, Mitch, and I think what they're going to do is if Cross is gone at 6, and if I'm wrong and they don't take a QB and they take Cross, now it's like, crap, what do we do at 7? You have your choice. I think they would love Sauce Gardner at 7, but they're going to be open to I think they're going to line up potential trades, like a soft launch, as we like to say in sales, right, Carl? Like, so they're there and they know they have a gentleman's agreement with somebody that, listen, we want to trade up to 7 for whatever reason, if they're available. So I think they're going to have contingency plans. Carl, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine, Steve. I'm going to throw a name out there at you that, I've quietly been watching him in the off season. I was very interested, and I kind of kept this one under my lid, but I was curious to see his combine, and his combine was great. And I think he's really gained a lot of attention and interest. It's Jermaine Johnson of Florida State. I have not heard him connected to the Giants from any of the beat writers or whatnot, but let's just say, all right, let's say we get a tackle at 5 and you're picking at 7. Let's say Hutchinson and Thibodeau are both gone. All right. Now, could you see them if they feel that he's that good, or if the edge is that big of a need? Could you see them grabbing him at 7? I know what you're going to say, Steve, because I know the way you think. That's a little high for your comfort zone with him. I'm sure you're going to say that, but I think it's worthy of a conversation. Guys, Mitch
first.
Okay. I'd be thrilled with drafting Johnson at 7 personally. He can defend the run and get around the edge. I mean, that to me is a great pick at 7, but especially in your scenario with the other 2 top edges off the board. Now, granted, the edge class is very deep. So you could wait till the second round, but I would not be upset if Johnson is the guy at 7.
Steve?
So that's the thing with this draft. Remember what I said about 15 minutes ago? There's only 4 or 5 blue chippers, and beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and literally every other player. And while it is a tremendously deep draft, but the reason all these other players are not going to be picks number 1, 2, 3, or 4 is because they have something. There's something. There's something that they don't do well, or there's something that they're missing or lacking or still need to develop. That's where I go back to, I'm going to trust the staff. Mm-hmm. Who is this kid? He's a one-year wonder. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because you've also heard me say on past episodes, I'm a tape guy. The tape don't lie. So the knock on him is, well, he had to leave Georgia. Okay. But he didn't go to Texas Southern, where our great Michael Strahan went. he went to FSU and played major.
Balled out.
Yeah. I mean, my God. So I'm actually more concerned, not to change the subject, but I'm just saying about Travon Walker. Like there's all this love for him, and he might get. I mean, today they were talking today he might go number one even. I'm like, come on,
Yeah,
that's
I
just
saw that, Steve.
that's smoking crap. But the tape don't lie. He's never even had double-digit sacks, and he's an athletic freak. But so I think this draft is going to be as fast, and we say this every year. This draft is going to be as fascinating as ever because there are no slam dunk. Even at number one, I mean, think about it. The number one pick in the draft, nobody really knows what they're going to do. So I guess I'll just finish with, what do I think? I trust this staff, and I've not said that for quite some time. That's not a cookie cutter. Oh, you have no guts. That's just no. I haven't felt this way in years. I mean, a decade. Like,
yeah.
And the proof of the pudding will be what they do, and they haven't earned our trust and respect in that sense. Like, let's see how this draft goes, and then of course you got to wait 3 years. But I'm just going to trust them and hope that they have tremendous contingency plans if for whatever reason things don't work out. If they feel Johnson's the kid at 7, then I'll trust that.
Sure. In Shane we trust. And finally, Mitch, you alluded to your last questions, which is the pros and cons of drafting Gardner and Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
I'll answer that very quickly. I don't see both. I think it'll be one or the other. And again, I think Wink's defense places the premium on the cornerback as opposed to the safety. So I would say it would be Gardner over Hamilton. Steve?
So Mitch, I would say this in response to the idea of picking those two guys, 5 and 7. And I think they're both going to be great players, and I think they could both benefit us. To me, and I've said this in the past as well, the number one priority of this coaching staff is to determine if Daniel Jones is our quarterback. So follow the logic. If we're trying to figure out, is he our potential quarterback of the future? And I don't think we should sign him to a 5th year. I think if he has a killer year, he breaks out, okay, you franchise tag him. I mean, whatever. Everybody's talked about that. The only way to do that is to rebuild the offensive line. And the offseason's been a great start given the resources we had to work with. But we need the draft. And whoever we draft is probably not going to come in and be a Pro Bowler from their first game. It's going to take time.
Yeah.
But we need to at least give this kid a chance. And waiting to the 2nd round for an offensive tackle, to me, is too much of a gamble in this draft. There's some great young offensive tackle prospects, but none of them are Neal or Kwanu or even Cross, at least in pass pro. So I think they have a responsibility to this franchise and to our fans and to ownership to figure out if he's the kid. And in order to do that, you don't wait to the 2nd or 3rd round to get a tackle. You get one. You're picking 5 and 7. Figure it out.
Wrap it up for us, Mitch.
I mean, we seem to be very like-minded here. We're all on the same page. Obviously, got to get that O-line fixed. Give Jones the chance to succeed or show that he's not going to succeed in the league, which would be disappointing for us as Giants fans. But and so I'm really thrilled that I had this opportunity to speak with you guys tonight, and looking forward to listening to your shows in the future.
Well, Mitch, you were a great guest. Loved your questions tonight. I thought your questions were great tonight.
Thank you.
And keep doing what you're doing. We love the support. We love having you. And looking forward to see where this goes and seeing how we all turned out after the draft. What our thoughts were and how accurate we were.
Absolutely.
Steve, anything in closing?
Nope, same here, Carl. Mitch, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your time with us. We don't take it for granted. And welcome to becoming a member of the Giants Zone, man.
Appreciate it.
Everybody, thank you again for watching. Thank you for your continued support. And we'll be back in studio Thursday night, taping another episode. We'll be doing 2 shows per week up through the draft. So hang in there with us and keep watching and following. We appreciate it. Have a good night. Take care, guys. Thank you.